Welcome to the English Bubble. Today I'm joined again by Richard Banfield and we're going to have a look at some more English sparkling wines. A few months ago, Richard and myself went off to Hundred Hills and Harrow and Hope up on the south part of Oxfordshire. Today, Richard, we're going to go the other side, way down south, and we're going to look at Simpsons wine estate. And actually over the coming weeks, we're going to travel across the countryside of the southern part of England. Simpsons, if you don't know the estate, they're relatively new, and I think that's perhaps one of the characteristics of quite a few of the wineries coming up. They started in 2014 when they planted a few vines, and their first harvest is 2016. We're only on 2018 here today, so you know it's relatively early days for this winery, and it's going to be fascinating to watch their progress over the coming years. I've been lucky enough to visit the estate. They're roughly halfway between Canterbury and Dover, and as the crow flies, it's only about 6 miles from the coast. So there's definitely a bit of influence here from the cool or the moderating effects of the English Channel. So they're on chalk, and again, we'll perhaps talk about some of these things over the coming series and see if we can see any commonalities. Whether you're on chalk or whether you're on clay or a mixture of both, I think might be some of those fascinating things we get stuck into. They're doing this rather lovely thing at the estate. They've identified, you know, they're using clones that have sort of got a proven track record. Then they're not starting from scratch. So the Blanc de Noirs is from 2 well-known clones, 121 and 124, and they're using quite sort of classic production techniques. So, you know, this is all on that beautiful chalk, and then they're taking it to the winery. It's stainless steel fermented, and after the fermentation, a portion of it, 20%, is put into small oak barrels. And the cork today is too tight for me to normally do what I do. And so a little bit has some oak contact. And 2018, it's interesting. We're going to have a look at some of these vintage styles over the coming months. And I think 2018 is probably going to be one of those that comes out as quite a consistent performer. And I think one of the things we've seen, Richard, over the last decade or so is more vintages where the weather's a little bit drier and there's a little bit more ripeness.
I think that's certainly true. I think the winemakers generally were pretty happy with 2018, weren't they?
Right.
I think in some other parts of the country, yields were a little bit lower than they'd have liked.
Right.
But quality, I think that they're very happy with. Certainly the maturity of the grapes, the ripeness of the grapes harvest was pretty good. And from the wines I've tasted, there seems to be good intensity of fruit as well.
Right.
That seems to be a characteristic of the vintage. To be honest, I find it often a characteristic of English sparkling wine, actually, is that sort of extra intensity. But I think in 2018, it seems to have come through particularly well.
So here we go. This is very young fruit. So they're in their third harvest in these 2 small vineyard plots. And as I say, there should be some lovely fruit from that harvest.
It's a lovely lifted nose. Citrus character, still very young. Some sort of that grapefruity character. So just very fresh tasting. A little bit of reduction, which I think we were half expecting on the Blanc de Noirs. Beautiful nose, still very refined, very youthful, undeveloped at this stage.
And there are some, you know, there's some notes in there that suggest it has been a warm vintage. I think I'm going to use this term again. I always get with Chardonnay from a ripe vintage, it's like pineapple that's been put on a barbecue. That slightly charred sort of note.
Yep. And on the palate, I think you can tell that small portion of this has been aged in oak.
Mm-hmm.
The way it fills the mouth, it doesn't taste of oak as such. It's more a sensation that one associates a little bit with the barrels. And really nice, still, how can I put it? It's got, I feel the frame of this wine at the moment. I'm looking forward to the way this might develop on the palate in terms of filling out in due course as it ages.
One of the things, Richard, I thought I'd just pour myself a tiny bit more. I was getting a bit of that character that isn't truly Chardonnay. I was getting some of the peach, kind of quite ripe peach fruit, which I don't normally associate with Chardonnay.
It wouldn't surprise me at all if the Simpsons had got some Viognier or something. So they're pretty adventurous. And of course they do have their estate in Provence in the south of France.
Right.
So they're used to some of those warm climate white grapes.
Yes. So Charles and Ruth Simpson have been making wines for many years. I think just the early 2000s, if I remember right. They have an estate producing some great rosé down in Provence.
Yeah.
So this is looking pretty good.
It's delightful at the moment. Beautifully balanced. I think the fizz is really well integrated. I'm not conscious of high acidity in any way. It's all harmonious. I suppose I'm just looking for the flavours to fill out a little bit over the next year or two. If I had a bottle of this in my cellar, or another couple of bottles, I think I'm just going to keep those for a couple of years and see how they go.
I think the lovely thing on the end of this, it's all primary fruit at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that's going to be the exciting journey. There is some of that tropical note really comes through on the end. So that's going to be, I'd love to see this in perhaps 2 years' time and see how the journey has gone. Let me just, I didn't get your glass ready, so let's do the Blanc de Noirs. So again, something very similar as is the Chardonnay. This is one clone, so it's Pinot Noir 115. So again, a well-known clone of Pinot Noir. And actually very similar. So this also has some oak impact. So stainless steel fermented, as the Chardonnay was, and then 20%, I was just checking I wasn't reading the wrong information, 20% is aged in barrels after the fermentation. And can you pick that up, or?
Possibly in terms of the fullness on the palate,
right?
But not as a flavour, I must say. But that's partly, I think, because I find the fruit flavour is more prominent, more explosive on this one than on the Blanc de Blanc.
Yes.
The aromas, I think, are absolutely terrific here. I'm not, funny enough, because it's a Blanc de Noir, I was expecting more red fruit character, which if I'm honest, I'm not picking up so much. Very much in the background, I'm picking up more candied lemon, that sort of character at the moment. So maybe the red fruit will come out in due course. But that's not to say it's short of fruit.
Yes.
On the contrary, at the front of the palate, this has just got so much flavour.
I'm picking up on the back of the palate some of the red fruits.
Okay.
I'm not sure I know which ones. I think it's like a bit of cranberry, a bit of raspberry, a bit of coming through, which really adding some beautiful depth to it.
I'm finding the overall impact of the wine more evident front of palate than back of palate at the moment.
Right.
And again, I'd love to see how this develops, to see what it delivers in due course on the aftertaste.
Because we can't really be sure yet, can we? The journey of the Pinot Noirs versus the Chardonnays.
We can't. This is one of the joys of English sparkling wine at the moment. Is that we're at the beginning. It's what everyone says. We are at the beginning of a journey.
Yes.
And there are very few examples of mature English sparkling wines that give us an idea of the trajectory they will take. And of course, they've been made by different producers to the Simpsons, so even they don't know how these are going to develop. I hope they're keeping a few bottles aside.
No, I do, for a live tasting when we visit. Now, when I go back quickly to the Chardonnay, Richard, I'm picking up quite a lot more of the what I'm going to call the oak impact.
Yes.
Isn't that funny? Because I didn't at all.
I agree with you. Suddenly, it smells slightly more Burgundian.
Yeah.
On the nose, tiny bit more of that oak character.
And
but also, you do pick up the ripeness of fruit of the vintage. You were talking about the tropical fruit character.
Tropical finish.
And that really apparent coming back to it after the Blanc de Noirs.
And obviously, one of the things we do try and tell people to do is not do what we do, which is open them and consume them, which is try and open them an hour before you want to drink them. Use one of these, you don't have to, but use one of these handy little stoppers, or just leave it open in the fridge. Now, one of the traditions, Richard, of our tastings is we always have a favourite of the pair. Where where are you going to go today? Because
right now, the Blanc de Noir is a bundle of joy for me. For me, it's just a pure delight. Much more obvious in some ways, more flattering.
Yeah.
And it's making me smile more right now. Having said that, I think the Blanc de Blanc is beautifully made, and I think that it also probably that says more as much about my palate as the wines.
Yeah.
I do tend to like more mature Blanc de Blanc. That is my taste, generally. And so it's not surprising I should reach that conclusion.
So so fascinating today. I think Blanc de Noir is showing really well. This was also a winner at last year's CSWWC. It won, I believe, the best English sparkling category, but I might need to correct that. So Blanc de Noir, Richard.
Blanc de Noir for me.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nick.
And cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers, everybody.
Well done to the Simpsons.
Well done to the Simpsons.